Hey everybody, how you doing? I hope you're well and happy Sunday to you. Uh, I'm going to give you an example of what is all too typical day for me. In in the particular uh, instance, what happened to me that led to my making this live stream that I'm about to share with you. And well, basically, it goes like this. I install a post from my media platform, blog, YouTube, so on, that concerns some aspect of race relations in Oakland, and do it on the Facebook group. I'll post that item of content on the Facebook group, and almost invariably, someone black, like a woman by the name of Susan Stever, who lives in Oakland, who happens to live in my general neighborhood of Lake Merritt, but I don't know her, and she's not a Facebook friend, right? She pops up, tags me, and attempts to diminish my story. All right. And remember, it's my point of view. And that happens a lot. And this time, it's in the case of the Battery SF, which is expanding its tech wealthy club to Oakland, to Lake Merritt, to the Bellevue Club, or what soon will be the former Bellevue Club at 525 Bellevue Avenue. Now, as I've vlogged before, I visited the Battery SF on 77 Battery Street a number of times. I've had a great experience each time. That's me. But that's not true for a number of my black friends, uh, a number who were full members at the time that I got feedback uh, from them. They quit, and one person told me they just simply didn't like the elitist attitude. I guess that makes me elitist, but whatever. So here comes the Battery SF to San Francisco, and so in evaluating the news, I raised the good and the bad aspects of it, and I focused on how well it would do in a city, Oakland. Oakland is a city, folks, not a borough of San Francisco, known for its historic contributions to Black history. For example, from the Black Panthers to, sadly, Oscar Grant, and of course Marcus Garvey, and the actions of many other people. With a club that tends to draw rich white tech entrepreneurs, I was asking, would that club fit well in San Francisco? I felt that Oakland was maybe too uptight for it at the time, but that was several years ago. Anyway, I'm just raising these questions and I'm putting out the question. I felt it was more than appropriate to do so, considering that I've experienced, as you have if you're an Oakland dweller, a lot of change in the neighborhood, right? Think about it, okay? Since 2016, we've had popular local cafes since closed. And I looked about Perch Cafe. I was there. And while I was at Perch, I looked around. I thought, wait a minute. This is in 2016. I thought, wait a minute. I'm the only black person here, only black man here. And it was just personally shocking to me. I didn't know that was possible in Oakland. I just didn't. Okay. I'm not kidding you. I'm not saying this as a joke. I didn't know that could happen in Oakland. I really didn't. I vlogged about it. It's on Zenny62 YouTube as I speak. I was the only black person in the room at Perch. That's weird. I've never known that. I've associated that with other cities like Berkeley or something, but that's just, and it's not a slam against Berkeley. It's just Berkeley has a different demographic. I didn't picture Oakland to be that demographic. It was just, I can go on and on and on and say it wasn't something that I could ever imagine. And I look back on that moment and it still feels weird to me. All right. And I felt that it pointed to a scary future. It also happened just prior to the events that led up to Barbecue Becky. Okay. And it also leads to another reason why I started Zenny62 Media, but that's a whole nother story. So anyway, I put the post that I'm talking to you about regarding the battery on the public Facebook group, and this woman by the name of Susan Stever, I believe, writes to me just, right out of the blue. She thinks it's okay to do this. She comes up and basically says, when I'm about to repeat, she goes, "Stop using circumstances like this for your own, quote, newsworthy self. So it becomes a predominantly black club or not. Are you coming in every night to count? Get over it. The club will define itself by what it values: music, cuisine, and events. Hopefully, it will reflect what's good about Oakland. Oakland is an amazing city filled with amazing people. Money can't buy you love. In other words, what she's saying to me is don't talk about the race issue and don't share my feelings as a black person. That's what she basically said right then and there in that post. Okay. And she wrote it in the Facebook group. Okay. There's a term for that. It's called racial gaslighting. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, folks, I didn't know there was a term for this. I only know that in my heart, I felt like, hey, I'm being gaslit. I'm being shut down. I actually Googled racial gaslighting for myself, thinking that the term didn't exist. And sadly, it does exist. It does. All right. What is racial gaslighting? Racial gaslighting is said to be a convenient kind of a tactic. All right. That where it's used to derail accusations of racism or any kind of conversation that might lead to a look at skin color and how people react to skin color and so on. Okay. And it shifts the scrutiny onto the accuser. Oh, you have the problem, like she's doing, forcing or trying to force me to question, and reassess my response to a question of race, a discussion of race or racism. And that comes not from me. This isn't a definition I invented at all. And I say sadly because this is a thing, folks, and it's an international thing, all right? A woman by the name of Natalie Morris put this up, and she wrote about it in the Metro UK, which proves that it's a problem that blacks face, not just in the United States, but at least in the United Kingdom, okay? And she writes this: a classic example of racial gaslighting is where a person of color describes a racist interaction only to have it immediately questioned. Are you sure that's what it was about? Was it definitely about skin color, though? But I don't think that was racism, another response. All of these responses undermine the lives experienced of racism the person of color has just described, says Ms. Harris. Ms. Morris, excuse me. The purpose of these questions is to make the person who has experienced racism second guess what they remember and how they interpreted events. That's gaslighting. And gaslighting in itself is just shutting a person down. It's like, well, you didn't experience. It's always explaining something away. But I find that on Facebook, people do that quite a bit. And to me, what it feels like? It's like someone coming up to me and tapping me on my shoulder on the street and then saying that to me out of the blue. I don't know them, right? I don't know where they're coming from. I don't understand. They just tapping me on the shoulder and they're putting. It's like I imagine Susan putting her finger in my face like this, like shame on you. How dare you? Don't. Or let's just take her words, okay? Imagine someone on the street comes up to you and says, "Stop using circumstances like this for your own newsworthy self." Okay, I could see her doing that. How would you react to someone treating you like that on the street? You would think they were a 5150. Again, they don't know you. They're objectifying you. All right? Which means that black men can be objectified too, folks, for those of you who think it only applies to, white women. No. All right? Okay? That's a related story. But imagine someone doing that to you on the street. That's what I perceive a person does that to me on Facebook. If they're not my friend, we're not connected, I don't know their names. All right? I blocked her. I mean, I'm not on Facebook to have interactions like that at all. And it says a lot about our society. And none of it, none of it good, really. And so I feel like the folks that do it, who claim to live in Oakland, it proves that we haven't had that conversation, that true reckoning on race. That place where people are really talking about, hey, I want to hear your story. I want to hear and see what you think, and vice versa. That's how you have a conversation about race, by acknowledging the other's point of view and vice versa. Okay. But you can't have a real conversation on Facebook, among other things. All right. Now, as a term, Angelique M Davis created racial gaslighting, at least from my research. She created the term in 2017, a research paper. She and her colleague Rose Ernst wrote that racial gaslighting is, and I quote, the political, social, economic, and cultural process that perpetuates and normalizes a white supremacist reality through pathologizing those who resist. They argue that is a tool for maintaining a social structure that favors anyone white over anyone black or color, rather than building a truly socially equitable and diverse world. Okay. And all I was trying to do was share my view of the battery. That's it. You know, I mean, it's called news commentary, Susan, and it's my right. And what I've taken to do is when people come at me like that, I'm going to use that material as more media material so that they understand that I have feelings too, and I have a reason for talking, and I'm using this to share what I think and what I feel. All right. And it's just as valid as if I did it with respect to, say, Bank of America and the payroll protection program, which I've gotten a lot of responses from around the country from people who have had similar experiences and so on. But I contend that social media has so screwed up our relations that we don't really know what America looks like. That America could be this amazing city, shining city on a hill that's really integrated. But if you watch the media and you looked at social media, you would think it was really, really more divided than it is. The real problem also is in this kind of social media where we text, where we write things to people, as opposed to letting people see and hear our thoughts, feelings, and emotions expressed. It comes off quite differently when I'm speaking to you rather than if I'm writing something to you. And on top of that, the way I interpret language, what Susan wrote, I was thinking in terms of how she would look and sound. I don't know what she looks like. I have some guess based on her approach, which I'm thinking, oh, she's this mean person and not very attractive and all this because she's mean, right? Sorry, but I'm human. And I mean, how could you think somebody who would be that ugly and write those things, how could you think that they'd actually be physically attractive? Okay. I mean, your conscious mind hopes that they are not, because you don't want to think that a person could draw in other people and yet be so mean. Okay. There's what that thought process is coming from. That, what she did was just flat out wrong. And thankfully there are people who chimed in, but again, it's a two-dimensional relationship. People read this stuff and they write it back to others. And I don't think they perceive for 1 minute how what they wrote impacts the person that reads it, that it's targeted to. Susan obviously didn't care about my feelings at all. And again, as I said, this has happened before, right? I remember just after the mayor of Oakland put a kind of a rally on at Lake Merritt with Oakland Unified School District concerned parents, about 200 strong, all mostly white, some Asian, maybe one black. And the black voices were asking, where are the black parents, and never getting an answer. But I was looking for someone to write an account about it who was there. Davey D was there, my friend. He did. Put the account on Oakland News Now, and then shared a post in a Facebook group on Oakland. And to my surprise and appointment, I got not one, but two or three women, all white, basically saying in variations that they didn't want to hear a black point of view. They wrote this. Okay, this is what they wrote. Okay. The one person who was most aggressively trying to drive her point, I blocked. Actually, I blocked two people. And then I had Lynn Raphael, actually, who ran for city council, who's a friend, call me and say, well, Zinni, can you unblock so-and-so because she's really a good person? I said, Lynn, how do I know she's a good person? She had no problem presenting her first self, which means her first interaction, her first self to me in that way. She doesn't care about how I feel at all. She wrote that she wanted to, this is what she continued to write, that basically she wanted the objective journalist point of view, which gets both sides, because she didn't want to read the emotions. Absolutely ridiculous. But she wrote that. And it's one reason I say that journalism has not been kind to Black history, because journalism, if you take a look at it, has been practiced mostly by folks who are white to protect a power interest they had. How else can you explain that a newspaper of the day would actually defend what happened to Emmett Till? Emmett Till, if you don't know the story, is a 14-year-old Black kid who was reported to have said something flirtatious to this white woman, Miss Carol, I believe, I forgot her last name, but it's important because years later, and in fact, this is in Vanity Fair, an account of this book, she said that she lied about what he had done. But even if he had just said hello or hi, you look nice today, and he's 14, to kill him for saying that? And here you have news organizations that will come along and, oh, by the way, this is okay. And you don't want to know the equivalent of that today as I see it? When you have news organizations come along and they talk about these right-wing, well, not right-wing, but white supremacists. There's a difference between being a white-wing or white supremacist groups. That's, in fact, it's not fair to anybody who's right-wing to put them in that camp, because there are people who are Black who are white-wing, okay? But they will take these white supremacist groups and they'll do these stories on them, and it's almost like they're fetishizing them, talking about their habits and norms and everything, and no one cares. When someone is so evil as to hate another person because of the color of their skin, and you're going to normalize that, and yet the people who do that will say, well, we're journalists. No. I'm not saying that they are. I'm saying I don't call myself a journalist. I'm a blogger. You know where I'm coming from. You know what my feelings are. There's no trying to make myself, more important from you or more important than you are, okay? I'm not more important than you are, or vice versa. I have a point of view. You can choose to agree or disagree with it. My point by this type of media, this form of media that is a child of the internet, is simply that you understand my side of the world. You understand that I represent a certain side of the world, a certain point of view, and you can choose to listen to it as you are now or go someplace else. But I'm not trying to fake you by saying I'm objective. There is no such thing as being objective in media. The minute you choose a subject matter, you do it. If an assignment editor says you have to cover that, you do have the option of saying you don't want to do it. Okay? Need the money? You can do something else. You have an option. So you cannot escape. You cannot for 1 minute escape that you have a value structure that draws you to a certain subject. You have a value structure that draws you to get a quote from a certain person, and then you can make an article look like you talk to an expert that is against rent control. You can make an article that looks like a certain person is for rent control, okay? And you can present an article that has both sides of it, but the bottom line is, why not just simply talk to those people who are in trouble paying their rent and find out what their story is, And maybe by finding what their story is, like, hey, they were in a certain industry that failed, maybe you can get aid to that industry, right? So that the income continues to flow to that person, right? So that they are better able to maintain their dwelling. So you understand the system of relationships that cause their problem. And it doesn't look like this on and off switch. It's like remote control is bad or good. There are stories that people go through and they need help. All right. That's the difference. And that's why I rail against this, because we've had, and what happens is that, going back to my point regarding Susan and this exchange, she and others say, okay, well, you're not a journalist. I don't claim to be a journalist. And then they'll point to, someone else did that to me on the Facebook group. Well, I'm a journalist. And this, you know what this is all over? It was over the Alley Cat Bar. That's right, because I refer to the Alley Cat Bar as just that. I just did it, all right? You're supposed to call it the Alley. Well, folks, if you're searching for something online, if you're searching for something about the Alley Cat Bar online, you're not going to type just the Alley and you happen to be in Ireland and you expect to get the Alley. You're going to type the Alley Cat Bar, you're going to type the Alley Oakland, right? If you get the Alley Oakland, maybe get variations, you'll type what its real name is, the Alley Cat Bar. I was talking to my good friend who owns it, Jackie Sipkins, about it, and he goes, I just call it the Alley. And she'll answer the phone. She says, but you're right, Zen, it really is called the Alley Cat Bar, because if you go outside, there's a sign that has the cat. Okay? So in order to make sure that my post could be found by people on the Alley, I refer to my target of my subject, the Alley Cat Bar, as just that in the title, so that you can find it easily by that. I'm not taking any chances. So then I had some other guy named Jim who I blocked, said, well, I've never seen that before or anything. Or he says, he asked me why I did it. And I told him it was search engine optimization, which anybody who understands the internet would know. Do you know what his response was? That's a bizarre answer. I wrote back, well, look, you're not in my profession. And so I wouldn't expect you to understand it. And then I blocked him, because there are people like Susan and like that guy, they go around the internet, on Facebook, I should say, and they quite literally seem to hunt for negative conversation. Either that or they're paid by some PR company that wants to sow just, conflict and everything between people for, based on race and everything else. And so they pick me because these folks are not my Facebook friends. I'm thinking there's a reason for this to happen. And sometimes you look at their profiles, you figure they have all these little arguments on them, and maybe this is their profession. But whatever the case, it's unhealthy. And as John Marks says, block them, Zinni, if they don't come around. Well, here's the thing, John, I don't wait for anybody to come around. I just block them. Because I don't have time in my life. I'm here in Georgia, spending time with my mom here, who's 86. It's my family. I've got my place in Adams Point, Oakland. My mom is most important. So what happens is that when you have that kind of focus, doesn't matter if it's elderly mother or young kids, guess what? Your patience is about that big. All right? I don't have it. And yet I find the people who do it on Facebook tend to be, they tend to be in their 50s and 60s and everything. And I don't know why this is psychologically, but it's like they have to go around Facebook and they have to hunt for these kind of interactions. Yeah, I'm 50, I'm 58, but I don't. My use of the internet is for business and dissemination of content. It's not to communicate with people. If I want to communicate with somebody, I just pick up the phone. Okay. I like talking. And that's why if you go to Oakland News Now, you'll find there's no comment system, but you can leave a video. I want to see your face. I want to see you talk. I want to know your name. That's the way it should be done. Okay. But no, I don't. I'm asking people who watch this, stop doing that with Black folks. Okay. If you have a problem hearing somebody talk about their problems being Black, do the world a favor. Steel yourself to listen. Stop trying to shut them down and stop trying to tell them that what they experienced in terms of race didn't happen. As a white person, that's wrong. That is wrong. That's like me trying to tell someone Italian that their experiences and the names that they endured being called were, not so much when they were. And when you listen to people, you find that you have shared experiences. But when you shut down people like Susan tried to do, you don't give any opportunity for that possibility to emerge. It's wrong to do that. Stop doing it. If you feel like you have to do it, for God's sakes, get psychiatric help for what ails you. Please. I believe that Facebook, by the way it's caused us, a number of us to want to communicate, has really contributed to a lot of our social ills. And Mark Zuckerberg and Susan and the other folks there, who good folks, need to really re-examine Facebook. They ought to make it more video if they can figure out how to make video even lighter, in terms of so light that it's almost non-existent from that perspective, okay? And as Mark says, racism is a form of mental disease. That's right. Racism is a mental illness. Racism is a mental illness two ways. It's a mental illness not just by the people who do it, but it also makes mentally ill the people who have to go through it again and again and again. Make us paranoid. All right? So it's not good either way. It's not good either way. If a person has a perception, just listen to them. Listen to the conversation. Ask questions. And don't gaslight them, and stop racially gaslighting. Stop telling a person. This was the other thing that I find really peevish. Someone will say, this is a new thing, that they're not racist. If I'm telling them as a black person that they're racist, and they're going to tell me that they're not racist. As John Mark says, same thing on Twitter. Yep. I block people for that too. And one of the persons I know who did it calls himself a journalist. He's racist. Definitely. Okay? Acknowledged by a number of people. Forget it. So anyway, I want to get this. I meant to do this. I was going to do this when it happened on Thursday. Then I had other subjects. So I'm going to stop this in about 5 minutes or so. I'm going to come back. I'm going to talk about Oakland Athletics president Dave Cavall. Another doozy coming up, folks. Subscribe to Zenny62. Live long and prosper. And bookmark Oakland News Now. We'll see you. That ends this broadcast.